I read 116 books in 2024, and here are my top 24 reads of the year. I did my best to order these 1 to 24, but I feel like some of them can switch places, but just know top 24 of 2024. Coming in at 24 is Phantasma. I had so much fun reading this book. It's about two sisters. One of them goes into this competition hosted by devils called Phantasma, and the other follows to try and keep her safe. One of the sisters is a necromancer, and this competition, it is extremely deadly. There's so many spooky things going on, hauntings, the devils, the ghosts, the necromancer aspect, and it was overall just a really fun time and a really different read. People compare this to Caraval a lot, which I think the concept is the same, just the execution totally different, and then the twist at the end, so good, so freaking good. Romance on point, and then the twist. I had so much fun reading this book. I gave it 4 stars and would definitely recommend to pick it up. Honestly, I had a lot of fun reading it during spooky season, so either wait till spooky season or in the winter when you're needing a darker fantasy. Coming in at 23 is Daisy Jones and the Six. This book is so interesting and well done. Taylor Jenkins Reid is an incredible author. This follows a rock band in the 60s and everything that comes with that. Drugs, women, alcohol, dealing with relationships in the band dynamics, you know, going from being a nobody to a rock star, as well as dealing with different dynamics between, you know, different band members as well as families and life in LA and the scene. It feels like they were literally a real band. It did take me a little bit to get through just because I was reading other things, but I did really enjoy it, and I can just like appreciate Taylor Jenkins Reid for her mind. I mean, just how she comes up with these things as well as how she executes them is so incredible. It's just fun to be in her stories and see what she comes up with. I gave this a 4 stars as well. 23 is the Happily Ever After playlist. I just remember feeling so happy while reading this book. I gave it 5 stars when I was reading it. It's one of those 5 stars where it just like gave me that 5-star giddy feeling, but I don't really think about it too often, but I still think it deserves 5 stars for the me and what it made me feel when I read it for the first time. So this is the second book in, I think it's called the Friend Zone series, like that interconnected series from Abby Jimenez, and I love this book. The female main character went through a lot in the first book, so if you read this there will be spoilers for the first book, but she is kind of dealing with grief, and then the male main character is an up-and-coming artist, singer, and I just loved their dynamic, their relationship. How they met was super cute. She basically found his dog and was like, I'm keeping it. I just love their dynamic. The banter is so good. Abby Jimenez rom-coms so freaking well. It's hilarious, but it's deep, and it just made me feel all the things, and I'm so freaking happy I read this book. Definitely recommend it if you haven't got to this one yet. This is one of my favorite Abby Jimenez books, and I love all of her books, as you will see once again later on in the video. Number 21 is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is one of her YA romance novels, and this was so freaking cute. It just gives you that giddy first love feeling, and I loved it. It was following our main character, Liz, who lost her mom really young, but her and her mom's things were rom-coms, so this cute little YA rom-com has a lot of references to rom-com movies, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, stuff like that. At the beginning of each chapter, it has a cute quote from a rom-com. Chapter 3, you're late, you're stunning, you're forgiven. Pretty Woman. I just love that aspect, and she is definitely the girly girl trying to be the main character in the rom-com. Wears frilly dresses and does her makeup all cute. She has kind of a nemesis in her next door neighbor, but she enlists him to help her be set up with this other character who moves back to town that they knew when they were younger. We're following that journey, and it's so cute. I love how cute they are together. I gave this 5 stars as well. Number 20 is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston quickly became one of my favorite authors after reading one of her books, 7 Year Slip, and this new release had me so excited. A lot of people didn't like it, but I had so much fun reading it. We are following our main character who gets lost in a fictional town of her favorite romance novels, and we just go from there. She meets an interesting bookseller who she can't place in the books she's read, and a lot of this book was her trying to figure out how to help the characters of the town, and the romance did come out of nowhere. nowhere, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cute. I just love the way she writes, the concepts she comes up with the magical realism. Her being a romance reader, going to where she's going and then being stuck in this fictional town. And it really helps her go through what she needs to deal with in her own life, as well as the male main character is going through a lot. You find out why he's in the town, and I was crying. So freaking good. I give this 4.5 stars. There also is kind of a little bit of a mystery woven into her books, which I really enjoyed too. That makes me want to keep reading, and just the way she writes, how she constructs sentences, the words she chooses to portray the story is just so magical and fun to read. I also loved like how the book ended and what the main character ended up doing, as well as there was a lot of the main character and her best friend, so I love that aspect as well. It was just so good. I don't understand why people were disappointed. I mean, I can understand, but I did not feel that way when I read this book. 19 is another Abby Jimenez book, and that is Just for the Summer. This was her new release in 2024, and it was chef's kisses. The mailman character, Justin, is the epitome of if he wanted to, he would. I also freaking loved that this book was set in Minnesota, because I grew up in Minnesota, so a lot of the things that they did and the dates they went on was things that I've done or know about. I'm like, I know where that is. I've done that. I've seen that. I can picture it in my head so well. That was just a lot of fun. I also love, again, Abby Jimenez does rom-coms so well. They're hilarious, but they're also deep. The mailman character basically becomes the caregiver for his younger siblings, and the female main character has pretty severe mommy issues, trust issues, and commitment issues, so dealing through all of that together, but it just made me feel safe and secure. I just had such a good time reading it. She just is gonna make you laugh, pull at your heartstrings, and this is just an incredible read. I gave it 5 stars. I have so much love for my fellow Minnesotan, Abby Jimenez. She does not freaking miss. 18. I read so many Elsie Silver books this year. It's not even funny. She is my queen of small town anything, whether it's cowboy, ranch, single, parent, whatever you want to call it, romance. Oh, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. All of her books have dual POV. I picked one that I've thought about a lot and resonated with me, but I seriously love all of her books. They're just so freaking good, and I don't know what she puts in them. I can sit down and read this in a single day. They're almost like 400 pages. Most of her books are. It doesn't even feel like I'm reading. It feels like I'm just like watching the story unfold, and I cannot get enough. It's so good. So this is the second book of the Chestnut Springs series, and the one I, again, think about the most. We're following Willa and Cade. Cade is a grumpy single dad. Willa is looking for a job and lands the nanny position. I had so much fun reading this book. I had so much fun in the Chestnut Springs series, in her new series, Rose Hill, as well as I read her first series, which I think is Gold Rush Ranch, and that one was incredible too. So I just cannot say enough good things about Elsie Silver. Read any of her books. They're so good. Powerless, so good. Reckless, so good. Start with Chestnut Springs. This is everything I want in a small town romance book, and she just delivers every single time, and all her characters are so different too, and she has so many books out now too. I'm so impressed that they all stand out from each other. 17 is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. And I was debating putting this one or the Atlas 6. This may be a recency bias thing, but I had so much fun reading this book. I heard before that it was kind of a Romeo and Juliet retelling. I was like, okay, had that expectation going in, but it just like blew me away. What I thought about the Romeo and Juliet retelling was not actually what it was, if that makes sense. I'm trying to say that in a way that I don't give it away, because I thought that was a fun twist, that I was like, oh my gosh, what? This is such a fun book. I love the way she writes. It's so unique from any other author that I've read. We're following two rival witch families in modern day New York City. Basically, they both have illegal businesses. Yeah, just like mob, crime boss, queens. The romances though, so freaking good. Like there's multiple romances. You fall in love with like all the different characters in this book. It's just so fun seeing the illustrations in her books. It's really beautiful. I also loved all the different personalities from the characters, and the motivations was like, why are you doing this? And then there was a character who made horrible decisions, but by the end you like really feel for that character. That's what makes such a good villain in my mind, where they can do horrible things but you still feel for them. I gave this 4.5 stars and I would 100% recommend it. In 16 we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I've never read a were vampire fantasy or romance before. I've never read Twilight, you guys. I've like barely seen the movies. I know, it's fine. So this was my first one. I really enjoyed this book. Ali Hazelwood is just a phenomenal author. I feel like it's so easy to read her works and get sucked into her stories. This one was no different. I believe it was her first fantasy novel and she did an incredible job. It was very political and there was a mystery going on with the female main character. So basically this vampire is married off to this alpha were to broker peace between the two species since they are warring, and you just follow that journey. What I did really like about this book was the political stuff. The spiciness went from like 0 to 100 towards the end of this book, and I feel like the political stuff got put on the back burner because of that. I wish that wouldn't have been the case, but I still had so much fun reading this. I also love all of Ali Hazelwood's like little references to things throughout her novel. This main character was freaking hilarious. Just her sense of humor and sarcasm and the things she did because she's a vampire and like the little quirks she had was amazing, and I had so much fun following this character and this story. 15 is If He Had Been With Me. This book made me cry so hard and I was not expecting that. I thought it'd be like a cute little YA romance, but no, this book is so sad. It deals a lot with depression as well as trying to figure out who you are in high school. We're following Autumn and it spans from her being a freshman to right after graduation. We also get to see a lot from her childhood in the perspective of her and one of her best friends growing up, and then you see how they kind of drift apart in high school, but how she, you know, the thoughts she has about him, but what she does because of things she doesn't think are true. This book was really nostalgic for me for some reason, and I think that's just because it kind of took you through those 4 years of high school, but also reflected on childhood as well and how that evolved. So I feel like I reflected on like my own youth and life and how much I have changed since then, how my perspective has changed, how my worldview has changed, how, you know, I've grown and developed into the person I am today. And I really love when a book can like make you do that. Oh my gosh, I'm just thinking about what happened at the end of this book. It made me so sad. So sad. Literally broke my heart. If you want a good sad read that'll make you cry, this is a good book for you. Speaking of sad books that will make you cry and will break your heart is Keeping 13. This is the second book after Binding 13. I don't know how to describe this and my experience when reading. I read both of these books in a weekend. I could not put them down. I feel like that was just my own sense of having to make sure the character story was okay, and what the female main character goes through in these books is just horrendous. What the male main character is going through is sad. Oh my freaking god. I can't believe people go through these things, but reading about it and having a character who goes through these things, who you can see into their minds and what they're thinking and what they're going through and how they try to survive through the things that this character went through was just insane. I put Keeping 13 on this list. Binding 13 made me so sad. Just lose all hope. This book gave me a lot of hope back. I loved the relationship. The male main character is so protective of the female main character, but can't protect her from this one thing, and it's really sad and it breaks my heart. So again, if you want a good cry but to really connect with these, they are set in Ireland. The male main character is an Irish rugby player, and the female main character is kind of bullied in school, has home problems, and has to transfer to this new school. And the way they met, I'm like, ooh. But how everything plays out between them, how she grows at this new school is incredible. I have yet to pick up the rest of the books from this series, but it's really good. It's definitely character driven and less plot driven, but it's still really good. Could not put it down. Almost halfway in 13 is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is the only V.E. Schwab book I've read, and I need to read her other books. I just haven't gotten to them, and I love this book. Her writing was so beautiful. I've never experienced anything like that, and the story, how that built up throughout the entire book. We're following a female main character who basically makes a deal with some higher force to which makes her immortal, and so she lives many centuries. Her curse is that she gets to live a long life, but no one remembers who she is. Basically makes it impossible to do anything that you would do. Buy groceries, eat at a restaurant, because as soon as someone leaves, who are you? She ends up having this beautiful love story between her and this human in New York in present day, and it was just so beautiful what she sacrificed at the end for her love. The decision she made and sacrifices was just 10 out of 10. I freaking love this book. I gave it 5 stars. If you vibe with the writing, I have a feeling will love this book. We are in the top 12, and coming in at number 12 is none other than one of my favorite authors of all time, Emily Henry, and Happy Place. I wasn't sure where to put this on this list. I loved it, but it wasn't my favorite Emily Henry book. I gave it 5 stars. I read it in a day. I literally tabbed so much. Like, the story was so much fun. I feel like I related to Harriet, which is our female main character, and the situation she was going through was so hard to read about, but how everything wrapped up was so beautiful. I love the friendships and the group in this book. We're following Harriet and Wen, but it's a unique situation because we don't meet them at the beginning of their love story. We meet them when it's falling apart. It's so interesting. You get to jump back and see them fall in love and to what led to how their relationship got to the way it is now, where it's not good, how they kind of work through that, how they have to tell their friends and their family, and then how, you know, all of that goes down. It was just so good. It's set in Maine too. Like, the setting is so freaking good. Emily Henry just does not miss. I do want to do a reread of this. Like I said, it's not my favorite Emily Henry book, which is why it's a little lower, but I still love this. I'm so happy I read it this year for the first time, and I would love to read it again soon. And I know it'll probably, every time I've reread an Emily Henry book, my opinion on it has changed. I feel like I need to read her books multiple times before it's set in stone, you know? But this one I still love. If you haven't read Emily Henry yet, please get on it because she will change your life. No one does it better, in my opinion, than Miss Emily Henry. 11 is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I freaking love this book. I listened to most of it and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of strategy. It was super interesting. So this is a science fiction book. We're on Mars and we're following our main character, Darrow, who is in the lowest caste of this society. The society is split up into different castes where different colors puts you in a different status. So Darrow is in the red caste, which is the lowest, and they're basically mining things on Mars to prepare it for humans to arrive, and he realizes everything he's been doing is a lie. So he infiltrates the higher castes and becomes a part of this school where he has to fight to survive and gets put in these interesting situations. It's basically play war with real consequences. Like I said, a lot of strategy. I was just so impressed by how smart the character was in this book and how he thought of things and how he saw the world and how he saw things playing out, which led to his decision. There was an interesting plot twist, and then the end of this book makes me really excited to get into the next book, which I will hopefully reading at the beginning of 2025. I loved it. I understand the hype. It was so good. Number 10 is A Man Called Ove by Fred McBachman. I had so much fun reading this book. This is following a grumpy old man, and he is just keeping watch on these neighborhoods and is like, "Get off my lawn, young hooligans." That is his vibe and what he gives off, but it was such an endearing story about life and being older and what really matters. That's kind of him on the surface, but he's so much more than what meets the eye. He had been through a lot. He had an interesting backstory, and then all these fun side characters come in that bring such light to the story and really help him through what he's going through. I was equally smiling at so many parts when reading this book, as well as sad when reading this book. I loved the way Fred McBachman story told and how everything connected through his chapters, and just like as you progress throughout the story, it was really beautiful. I know there are multiple books of his that I want to get to in 2025, specifically Beartown. I think A Man Called Ove is a great Fred McBachman book, though. If you want to get into him, would 100% recommend. We're in the top 10, and at number 9 is Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maher. This book was such a fun surprise. I did not think I would love it as much as I did, but I had so much fun when I was reading this. We are following Evie, who is kind of clumsy, goofy, says inappropriate things at random times, and lands a job unexpectedly as the assistant to this kingdom's villain. You see office dynamics. It very much gives The Office in the relationships between the villain's employees. It's so much fun. They all have their own unique personalities and bring different things to the table. There's a magic creatures trainer. There's an HR representative who is kind of stuck up. There's, you know, the villain himself who's spooky. There's Evie, who I mentioned earlier, is just kind of a mess, but in a good way. I just had so much fun reading it. The romance in this one was good. As it continued into the second book, it kind of fell for me, but this was such a fun surprise. It was so unique against other fantasy books in that we are in the perspective of the villain. That made this story so much fun. Number 8 is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was also such a unique fantasy book for me, and I just had so much fun reading it. The female main character is kind of a recluse and just wants to be alone and study her fairies and finish her encyclopedia. We're following her as she enters her last expedition to study a species of fairies that she hasn't done field research on yet. When she does that, she'll be able to complete her encyclopedia. And then who shows up but her nemesis? It's interesting in the way that their relationship evolves, and their bickering dynamic is a lot of fun. Her evolution from being a recluse to being a little more comfortable with human interaction at the end because of this small town she's in, and how that kind of melts her heart a little bit, even though it is the middle of winter. And then I will say too, this book was a little darker than I expected in terms of like the fairies and what they do, and these specific types of fairies hurt people in the small town that they're nearby. So like, getting to see that magical fairy tale-esque world was also a lot of fun. Yeah, would really recommend if you're looking for a unique fantasy book that leans more towards fairy tale but has a cute romance and also really interesting characters. Number 7 is another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and that is Carrie Soto is Back. Or if you've watched any of my other videos, you've probably heard me say I love a strong female character, and Carrie Soto is one of those strong female characters that I freaking love. She is a professional tennis player who was all tennis all the time, winner, very cold, not open to relationships or soft fuzzy feelings. That's just not her vibe. She is tennis, she is hardcore, she is intense. It was a lot of fun to see her come back when she was kind of told she wouldn't be able to. You know, that journey was a lot of fun. This book made me cry. There was such a cute relationship, and a really interesting relationship actually too between her and her father. Just seeing their dynamic was heartwarming, but it was also really unique in that he really coached her and was like, you're playing tennis, and kind of pushed it on her, and that became her whole personality. There's also a little bit of a romance in here that kind of contributes to her evolution throughout the book. The tennis aspect was a lot of fun. It was pretty prevalent, but I had a lot of fun reading it as a person who watches tennis here and there. Again, Taylor Jenkins Reid, all the books she comes up with, so different but so fun to follow. The way she writes and the characters she creates. I have so much fun reading about them. We are getting down to the wire, and coming in at number 6 is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is another book where I feel like people didn't like this book as much as they expected, but I really enjoyed this book. It was different from the previous book in that the world kind of expanded, and you know, there was more action. You got to see kind of different characters and their journey as well. You still see the female main character and male main character. They're kind of separated, and you see them how they come back together. There's a lot of loss, but I just love this duology so much, and I reread Divine Rivals this year, so I'm not putting that on this since it wasn't a new book this year, but if I would have read it for the first time this year, it probably would have been on here as well. I just love these characters and the world. It was so fun. It made me feel like I was in the Industrial Revolution. I loved their love and their romance and how they navigated everything, how the female main character was so take charge, and oh, it was so good. I loved it so much. It just warms my heart. I would 100% recommend this duology. In my opinion, absolutely worth everything. We have made it to my top 5 books of 2024, which is crazy, but coming in at number 5 is a book I rave about all the time, and that is Play Along by Liz Tom Ford. This is the 4th book in the Windy City series, and it follows Isaiah and Kennedy. Isaiah is a professional baseball player, and Kennedy is their team doctor. After a crazy night in Vegas, they somehow wind up married, and they have to stay married so her career does not end up in jeopardy. I loved him so much. Isaiah is like literally one of my favorite male main characters. He's so thoughtful, he's so sweet, he's so patient, he's so sure. I love that so much. Kennedy could be seen as a little cold, a little uncomfortable, but there are definitely reasons for that, and you learn about it in the book. And then you also learn about Isaiah's past and his history, and maybe why he kind of feels like he has to be happy-go-lucky golden retriever. The way they were there for each other, how their relationship grew from the beginning to the end. It made me so happy. They are my happy place. They are my safe space. This book is incredible. I love these characters so much, and I didn't think I would. You know, I thought, especially the first three, they were a good time, but I don't know what was in this book that made me feel that way, but it was just a whole different level. 5 stars, 100%. Number 4 is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, and this was my first Annabelle Monaghan book, and I gave it 5 stars. It was so freaking good. You're following Allie, who is a single mom who is going through a divorce as well as a death of someone close to her. This book is marketed as a romance, but obviously summer romance. In my Barnes & Noble, it's in the fiction section, which I think it deserves to be in the fiction section. Definitely more women's fiction. And it's so wholesome and one of my favorite romances I have ever read. I loved how present the main character felt in this book. I loved the kids and that dynamic. I loved she had a cute relationship with a neighbor, and then how the relationship in this book really brought her back to life was so beautiful. I just had so much fun, and it was kind of an unexpected thing because they had known each other before. It was so good. I love this book so much. Number 3 is a book I read towards the end of the year, and that is Real Americans by Rachel Khong, and this is just a fiction book. I love this book so much. You are following 3 different characters throughout different generations of the same family. There is a lot in this book. It made me think so much. There's some science fiction elements dealing with like genetics and choosing the future. There's a lot of questions about, you know, if you had more time, what would you do? And then I feel like the main characters were all kind of like, who am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? It was also a lot about privilege and wealth, and money's great, but money can only buy you so much. Can it really buy you the things that truly matter? We're following Lily, who is kind of our first character, as she falls in love with the heir of a vast pharmaceutical fortune. Follow her son and see how he evolves throughout his youth into his adulthood. And then our final perspective is Lily's mom, and you see her journey from China to the United States and what she goes through to get there and what she sacrifices and how that affects Lily and her grandson and, you know, really her whole lineage. It made me think so much. And like I said, I love what a book can make me think. All right, we have made it to our final 2 books. My top 2 reads of 2024. Coming in at number 2 is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I was not able to soak this book up the first time I read it this year. I read it multiple times this year. Don't come for me. And that is because I wanted to give it my honest opinion. I wasn't sure how I felt about it after the first read, but after reading it again, I love this book. We are meeting these characters at a time when their whole lives have exploded, specifically their relationship status. Daphne and Miles end up being roommates after an unfortunate situation implodes both of their relationships. Daphne has nowhere to go, so Miles, in a similar situation to Daphne, lets her stay with them. She kind of feels stranded in this town. Funny Story, and literally all of Emily Henry's books are everything I want in a romance novel. Depth, funny main characters, like the female main character in this, her sense of humor was on point. I also love how all of her books have elements of, you know, reading or writing, or they're surrounded by the book world, and this one's no different, as the female main character is a children's librarian, and that is so freaking cute. I love this book. 5 stars. My number 1 read of the year. This is no doubt the best book I have read this year, the best book I have read maybe ever, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I didn't rate this book. I don't know how you can rate a book like this. Following 2 sisters during World War II in Nazi-occupied France. Yikes. It's intense. It's crazy. The shit that happens in this book, unfathomable. Like, obviously this book is fiction. These characters are fiction, but Kristen Hanna does such a good job of having people's real life experiences and transforming it into a book like this. There were real women who did the things and went through the things that the characters in these books went through, and that just makes me sad, thankful that they were able to do the things that they did to help the people that they did, but also sad for what they had to endure, and just made me think of how humanity can be so evil and so good at the same time. Actually insane. This book made me cry. It was so heart-wrenching. I don't think I've ever read a better book. I don't know if anything will ever top this. It will probably be a Kristen Hanna novel. She does historical fiction so well and just takes such good care of the characters and, you know, the stories, and handles it amazingly. And her writing and prose is, I don't even know the word for it. It just leaves me speechless. That's what it is. I will literally probably think about this book till the day that I no longer exist on this planet, which is crazy to say, but it deserves its spot at the top. I don't know how I could give any other book that I read this year number one. If you're up for it, if after you read the trigger warnings you feel like you can read this book, please do. I think it's so important to read things like this so we understand what people went through in times like this, like World War II, like her new book, The Women, Vietnam. She takes these very sensitive times and just does an incredible job sharing stories about it. Finishing off The Only Way I Know How with this at the top of the list. With that, those are my top 24 books of 2024. I've never read this many books in a year. Will I ever read that many books in a year again? I don't know. I'm happy I was able to explore so many stories and fall so much more in love with reading this year. I feel very lucky to have all these books and to have the resources to get these books, as well as Kindle, and be able to use my library to get books. I feel very lucky, very thankful for you for being here, for watching. As always, if you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. If you plan on reading any of these books in 2025, let me know which ones you're thinking of picking up. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, if you could like and subscribe, that would be very appreciated. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!